want you to feel this, not just hear it. Every glance you give, every word you speak is already a move on an invisible board. You think you decide freely, but freedom is a fragile illusion. I've watched her. The way she tilts her head, the almost imperceptible curl of her lips when she knows something I don't. At first, it unsettled me. Later I understood. Power rarely shouts. It whispers, drips like poison into choices you thought were your own. I remember the first time I realized it. A simple conversation that left me off balance, questioning my instincts, my judgments. That moment felt like falling, yet landing with cold clarity. That is the truth of influence. It lives in the pauses, the subtle gestures, the unspoken promises hidden behind charm. You cannot fight it if you cannot see it. And most cannot. Betrayal does not announce itself. Obsession does not knock politely. Control creeps invisibly until the cracks appear, and the world as you knew it collapses. I have studied these cracks. I have traced the lines between intent and manipulation, desire and deceit. There is a rhythm to it, a pattern that repeats like a pulse you cannot ignore. I am not sharing this to terrify you. I am sharing this to arm you. Knowledge is power, yes, but understanding is survival. When you learn to read the signs, to recognize the subtle shifts, you see before you are blind. You anticipate before you are caught. You taste the pull of mastery, not over others, but over yourself, over the chaos of influence that surrounds you. This is your first step. Lean in and let the shadows teach you. Because once you see the unseen, you cannot turn away. You cannot unlearn the rules that govern minds, and you will never be the same. I remember the first time I noticed it. You think people speak plainly, act sincerely, but the truth is they are layered, coded, designed. Everything they do is a signal, a thread woven into a pattern meant to pull, to guide, to manipulate. At first it was subtle. A glance held a fraction too long. A smile that hinted at warmth but left an echo of chill. I wanted to trust, desperately, and yet my instincts whispered warnings I tried to ignore. You need to understand how these patterns emerge, how they weave into the fabric of interaction without anyone noticing. Attention is baited like a finely set trap. Words are weapons, softly sharpened and pointed toward desire, curiosity, fear. Every compliment hides a lever, every touch a trigger. And the curious part, what makes it terrifying, is how natural it feels. You think it is genuine because you want it to be, because to suspect would shatter the illusion, and illusions are safe. Truths demand confrontation. I watched her movements like a map of intention, tracing invisible lines between what she said and what she truly sought. There was rhythm in her gestures, subtle cues that revealed her strategy. The way her hand lingered on a surface when she was assessing, the tilt of her head when gauging reaction, the soft shift of her weight when testing patience. At first I mistook these for quirks, personality traits. Later I realized they were tactics, deliberate and precise. Human psychology has a rhythm, a pulse that can be read if you are willing to pay attention. Ignore it, and you are a marionette. Learn it, and you navigate chaos like a shadow, unseen yet fully aware. I saw how desire could be twisted into control. She didn't need to command loudly. She only needed to make me want her guidance, to crave her approval. That craving, once ignited, becomes a subtle cage. You begin to anticipate her moods, her words, her intentions, until the very thought of acting independently feels like rebellion. And yet she never touches overtly. She simply aligns the stars, waits for the gravity to do the work. Patterns are everywhere. A pause before a response can signal doubt, invitation, or threat. A laugh can hide ridicule, admiration, or mockery. Tone and inflection become instruments in a symphony you are only beginning to hear. And every human carries unconscious habits, tics, gestures, glances that betray more than they intend. The key is observation. Watch the small things. Watch the gaps between words. Learn the rhythm of manipulation, the cadence of intention. I also had to reckon with my own blindness. I had believed in trust, in straightforward truth. That belief almost cost me. Every instinct I had to step back to question, I dismissed. I wanted narrative over reality. I wanted comfort over clarity. But reality is indifferent to comfort. Reality does not care if your heart is willing. It tests you over and over through the tiny invisible threads that connect people to influence. This is your warning, your chance to see before the trap closes. People will try to guide your decisions, bend your emotions, shape your world without you noticing, and some of them are brilliant. They hide their intent beneath warmth, humor, charm, convincing you it is your choice, your desire, your decision. I have walked through that fire. I have felt the subtle tug of someone else's design, the slow erosion of certainty, the creeping awareness that you are not fully free. And when you finally see it, when clarity dawns, you are both terrified and awakened. You must observe, learn, and catalog the patterns. Every pause, every word, every gesture is part of a larger system. Feminine psychology in particular has its currents and eddies, moments of seeming vulnerability masking intent, kindness hiding strategy, flirtation shaping desire. These are not evil, not necessarily. They are tools, often used unconsciously. But to recognize them is to arm yourself. To ignore them is to hand your mind over, piece by piece. I watched. I recorded in my mind. I traced invisible maps of intent. I saw when she sought admiration, when she tested boundaries, when she wanted to provoke jealousy or submission. I learned to distinguish genuine emotion from performance, instinct from strategy, affection from leverage. It was exhausting, painful, illuminating. And slowly, I began to see the theater for what it was, to sense the invisible strings. This is the foundation. Before you can act, you must understand. Before you can influence, you must recognize influence. Before you can survive in a world where power whispers and obsession simmers beneath polite conversation, you must learn the rules that govern minds. They are subtle, silent, and relentless. Once you see them, nothing will ever feel accidental again. The choices you thought were yours, the hesitation, the surrender, the desire, they are no longer mysteries. They are maps, and if you learn to read them, you can navigate without being crushed. Watch closely. Listen carefully. The patterns are there, hiding in plain sight. And once you notice them, you begin the first step toward mastery, awareness. Without it, you are lost. With it, you begin to reclaim your mind from the unseen hands that would shape it. I felt it. The friction beneath the surface, the subtle weight of attention that pressed without contact. Frustration, unease, the creeping awareness that I was being studied as intently as I studied her. At first, it unsettled me. It made my mind race, my chest tighten, my instincts itch with a warning I could not fully name. You will feel it too, the tension between curiosity and dread. A question will gnaw at you. Why did she do that? What is she testing? I remember the moment my own reflection struck me hardest. My reactions, my pauses, my need to seek approval. Every vulnerability I carried could be weaponized, mirrored, twisted into control. My mind raced in quiet panic, tracing every word, every gesture, every lapse in attention that could be exploited. And yet, in that same heartbeat of fear, clarity emerged. Observation is power, but only if you can detach emotionally without becoming cold, to feel without surrendering, to notice without reacting. The signs are subtle. A glance held a heartbeat too long. A hesitation in speech that betrays curiosity or judgment. A touch that lingers just enough to provoke awareness without promise. Patterns of praise and withdrawal that alternately draw you in and push you away. These are not accidents. They are signals, coded messages hidden beneath the veil of charm and warmth. And every time you recognize one, a map of intention unfolds before you. I learned to catalog these moments, not as judgment, not as suspicion, but as data. Every flicker of emotion, every twitch of a smile, every shift in posture became a coordinate, a point on a web that stretched unseen between us. The mind is a landscape of subtle currents, and to navigate it, you must learn the tide and its hidden undercurrents. You must watch, note, feel, but never surrender entirely. There is a tension in this awareness. To see clearly is to accept discomfort. To understand strategy is to witness manipulation without immediately reacting. And yet, the reward is unmatched. When others stumble blindly, misread intentions, or fall into their own traps, you hold the map. You see the invisible strings before they tighten. You feel the currents before the storm arrives. And in that space, you find an unexpected sense of control, not over them, but over yourself. I felt the shifting dynamic as a quiet, insistent pulse. My heart would tighten with anticipation, my stomach knot with dread, and then relax with comprehension. Recognition replaced fear. I saw her strategy for what it was, dissected the rhythm of her influence, and in that observation, I claimed a small, imperceptible mastery. Mastery begins with awareness. The power to anticipate, to predict, to act deliberately is born here, in the silence between the gestures, the pause between the words. Do not mistake this detachment for apathy. You will feel everything deeply. The allure, the provocation, the pull of desire and fear. But you must also hold the line within yourself. The moment you surrender to emotion, you give away the advantage you have painstakingly earned. Keep your mind clear, catalog the signs, learn the patterns. And remember, once you read them, you hold the map while others stumble blindly, lost in currents they cannot perceive. Observation is more than seeing, it is knowing. And knowing is power. I began to test the rules, quietly, almost imperceptibly. The first lesson was withdrawal. Absence creates tension. Curiosity blooms in the gaps you leave. Desire sharpens when the mind has nothing to grasp. But this must be wielded carefully. Too much, and suspicion replaces intrigue. Too little, and the effect is lost, drowned in familiarity. The dance of presence and absence becomes a silent language, and I learned to speak it fluently. Next came mirroring. I reflected her desires, her fears, her patterns, subtly bending them toward my understanding without ever revealing my own hand. A tilt of the head, a word echoed softly, a gesture matched with quiet precision. Small acts that made her feel seen, acknowledged, understood. And in being mirrored, people reveal themselves. They trust patterns they recognize, not knowing that in that recognition, they have opened themselves to your awareness. Mirroring is not mimicry. It is a bridge between observation and influence. A tool to map intention and subtly guide without confrontation. Then, emotional triggers. I began to catalog them. Words that elicited curiosity, gestures that sparked doubt, silences that demanded attention. I watched how small provocations reshaped moods, how pauses could weigh heavier than entire conversations. But the key was never reaction. Observe always. Feel the pull, measure it, and allow it to unfold. Impulsive response is the undoing of control. Patience, restraint, timing. These are the true instruments of influence. Every emotional shift becomes a coordinate, a point on the map of human behavior. Every interaction is a battlefield disguised as conversation. No shouting, no force. Only the quiet tug of understanding, the subtle reorientation of attention, the gentle recalibration of desire. I realized that control is not domination. It is influence, invisible, untraceable. It exists in the space between words, in the pauses, in the gestures that go unnoticed. You will see their patterns, learn the cadence of their reactions, and know instinctively when to act and when to retreat. Timing is mastery. Timing is survival. These rules are not magic. They are observation, patience, and calculation distilled into habit. They are the scaffolding upon which silent power is built. They require no spectacle, no grand displays of strength, only the deliberate application of awareness. With them, you guide minds as rivers guide stones, without force, without confrontation, leaving only the impression of choice where none existed before. I practiced constantly, quietly mapping tendencies, adjusting my own responses, testing subtle provocations. I saw how anticipation could shape behavior, how absence could ignite obsession, how carefully mirrored emotion could draw trust and disclosure. And with every experiment, the rules became instinct, the strategies woven into my reflexes until they were second nature. Master these principles, and you do not need to dominate. You do not need to coerce. You become a silent architect of influence, a quiet conductor of emotional currents, guiding without ever being noticed. And in that space, in that subtle mastery, you discover the true power, the power to see clearly, to act deliberately, and to navigate human desire and manipulation with precision. These are the laws of unseen control. Observe, withdraw, mirror, provoke, measure, and retreat. The mind becomes a map, and in mastering the map, you find a form of power that is unseen, unchallenged, and unbroken. The tension grows slowly, almost imperceptibly, like fog rolling over a landscape before the sun rises. You feel it first in your chest, a tightening that is both thrill and warning. Desire begins to twist into something more, something dangerous. Obsession does not arrive with a shout. It creeps, uninvited, until it saturates every thought, every hesitation. I watched it take shape in her. The subtle shifts, the flickers of unease, the way her attention sharpened when I withdrew, softened when I mirrored her gestures. Trust became a tool, fascination a lever, curiosity a trap. She did not understand the game, and yet it consumed her entirely. I could see it in the way her smile faltered when I did not answer immediately, the small tremor in her hands when my eyes lingered too long. The ebb and flow of attention became a silent conversation, a war fought without words. Every glance, every pause, every inflection carried weight. I began to anticipate her reactions, mapping the rhythm of her desires and fears like a cartographer, charting an invisible world. You will recognize these signs too if you pay attention. Sudden warmth that seems disproportionate, inexplicable anger that surfaces and fades like tide on sand, curiosity that lingers long after the conversation ends. These are markers, coordinates on the invisible map of emotional influence, and with each spike, each tremor of feeling, there is an opportunity to adjust, to guide, to control. Obsession is dangerous even when earned. It must be treated with respect, observed without surrender. I felt a mixture of triumph and caution. Triumph, because the patterns had revealed themselves and the map was clear. Caution, because obsession, once ignited, can consume both the observer and the observed. There is a delicate balance. Too much pressure, and you provoke resistance. Too little, and the opportunity fades. The battlefield is no longer external. It lives inside your mind, a chessboard of influence and desire where every move matters, even silence. Withdrawal became a tool of escalation. When I pulled back even slightly, the effect was immediate. Her attention intensified, her curiosity sharpened. Small gestures, a missed call, a delayed message, sent ripples through her behavior. I watched silently, noting every reaction. The silence spoke louder than any words I could offer. Mirroring, too, reached new depths. Subtle reflections of her desires, her fears, her unspoken moods created resonance. She began to anticipate me, to seek validation through the patterns I had gently established, and yet I did not act impulsively. Every interaction became a test of restraint, a measure of patience, a study in the art of influence. Timing was everything, emotional triggers multiplied. A word, a pause, a glance. The simplest act could ignite a response, shift attention, recalibrate desire. I cataloged them meticulously, noting which sparks ignited curiosity, which provoked tension, which drew confession. The landscape of her mind became a terrain I could navigate, a silent map I had earned through observation and restraint. Through it all, I remained detached, silent, aware. To surrender to the thrill, to indulge in the power, would undo everything. Obsession must be watched, not fed. Desire must be guided, not forced. Every spike, every tremor, every flicker of emotional intensity became a signal, a tool, a moment to act with precision. The chessboard of influence was alive, and I moved deliberately, anticipating, predicting, controlling without ever revealing the hand that guided it. I realized then that escalation is both test and revelation. It exposes weaknesses, both in others and within yourself. It sharpens awareness, hones restraint, and deepens understanding. The emotional tension is the crucible where mastery is forged. And once you learn to navigate it, you no longer react, you anticipate. You no longer stumble, you guide. The game is invisible, but its effects are undeniable. This is where obsession lives, where desire becomes strategy, and where influence transcends brute force. The rules you learned, the patterns you observed, the triggers you cataloged, they all converge here. The stakes are high, but clarity sharpens the mind. And in that clarity, you find the power not just to survive, but to command the currents of thought, emotion, and attention, quietly, invisibly, inevitably. I understood it fully then. The rules, the patterns, the invisible threads of influence, they were no longer theory. They were reality. Power is quiet. Control is unseen. Obsession is not chaos. It is a reflection of understanding, a mirror held up to those who underestimate subtlety. She revealed herself not through words, but through the tremors of her reactions, the brief falters in her expression, the fleeting glances that betrayed hesitation. Each flicker was a story, a disclosure, a key to the architecture of her intent. I had cataloged, mirrored, and guided so many invisible currents that the world seemed transparent. I saw the play of influence in every interaction, the weight of every pause, the momentum of every glance. You will feel this too, when the mask slips and the hidden patterns crystallize. That moment is both terrifying and intoxicating. Clarity strikes like ice, sharp and undeniable. and you see everything that was once obscured. Influence is no longer potential. It is manifest. Betrayal, once a shadow I feared, now becomes a tool. It is not an end. It is a mirror showing the boundaries of power. The first tremor of duplicity, the faintest fracture in trust, no longer surprises me. I see it, understand it, and calibrate accordingly. Detachment hardens. The heart, once vulnerable, becomes a strategic instrument. You are no longer naive. You are no longer prey. You are the observer, the strategist, the silent force shaping outcomes without declaration or display. Every detail matters. The twitch of a finger, the shift in posture, the flicker of tone. They are all data points. Patterns emerge, predictable yet complex, and within that complexity lies mastery. You learn to anticipate, to respond with precision, to guide attention without force. Influence does not need volume. It does not need threats or displays of dominance. It flows in the silence, in the spaces between gestures, in the calculated withdrawal and mirrored reflection that has become second nature. I watched her struggle with this invisible gravity, a tension I had cultivated, a curiosity I had stoked. She was caught in the pattern, drawn into a rhythm she did not understand. Obsession is dangerous, yes, but when it arises from clarity, it is also a revelation. It exposes the interplay of desire, control, and attention in the purest form. And in observing it, I felt both awe and restraint. The power is intoxicating, but it is also fragile. One misstep, one overreach, and the balance shatters. This is the turning point, the moment when awareness transforms into mastery, when the observer becomes the conductor of unseen currents. You see not only the intentions of others, but the vulnerabilities in yourself, the impulses that once dictated behavior. You gain perspective. You gain clarity. And in that clarity, you realize the true nature of influence. It is not forceful. It is silent. It is invisible. It is the art of shaping outcomes without ever being caught in the act. At the peak of understanding, detachment is not coldness. It is precision. You are unshakable. You are patient. You are deliberate. The mask has fallen, the patterns are undeniable, and the game is yours to navigate. You no longer react. You anticipate. You do not chase desire, you guide it. You do not fear betrayal. You see it, measure it, and use it as insight. And in that space, you become something both quiet and powerful, the architect of influence, the strategist of emotion, the unseen hand shaping the world around you. This is the climax, the revelation, the point where fear dissolves and mastery takes root. Obsession mirrors understanding. Betrayal illuminates power, and in detachment you find the strength to move silently, confidently, inevitably. Now you carry the lesson forward. Every interaction, every glance, every hesitation is no longer random. It is information. Each pause, each smile, each subtle shift in tone becomes a signal, a coordinate on the invisible map of influence. These rules are not cruel. They are necessary. They are the lenses through which the chaos of human behavior becomes readable, navigable, and ultimately survivable. You will not be manipulated again. You will recognize the currents before they pull you under. You will see the patterns before they are set. You will understand the silent laws of the mind, the unspoken agreements that govern attention, desire, and control. Knowledge alone does not grant power. Awareness does. Observation does. Detachment does. And now these tools are yours, but with power comes responsibility. Influence is not a weapon for cruelty. It is a scalpel, precise, careful, deliberate. The fragile trust of others must be respected. The human heart is not a playground. It is a terrain to navigate with care. Misuse of these principles leads to destruction, not mastery. You must remember that the mind is a battlefield, and awareness is the armor that protects you, even as it guides you. The next lesson awaits, just beyond the horizon. Deeper truths, subtler manipulations, the edge of psychological mastery lie in wait. The shadows grow longer. The currents of influence move faster. You will need patience, observation, and an unshakable calm to navigate what comes next. And when the next lesson arrives, you will meet it armed with clarity, anticipation, and the quiet certainty of someone who has learned the rules, internalized them, and survived. Remember this: the mind is not only a vessel of thought, it is a battlefield. Every choice, every hesitation, every desire can be both weapon and opportunity. Knowledge is the weapon that never rusts, the shield that never cracks. You are no longer blind. You are awakened. You walk forward differently now, carrying an invisible weight of understanding. Every glance you meet, every word you hear, every pattern you observe is part of the unseen map you hold. And in that silent mastery, you are no longer a participant in the chaos. You are the strategist, the observer, the quiet force shaping outcomes without declaration, without spectacle, without need for recognition. You have seen, you have learned, you have endured, and now you are ready.